Good Monday morning of the 34th week of the year. It's the last week in Ordinary Time, and next week will be in Advent. And then we'll be getting ready for Christmas. Isn't that neat? So anyway, this is where we are. And the reading today, I'm thinking, I don't know, the Old Testament reading is over my head. Oh yeah, what is that? I'm going to take a look here. It's the book of the prophet Daniel. It's an apocalyptic reading, okay? But I have to say, I'd rather, if you don't mind me sticking with, Luke is a great storyteller, and I want to take this somewhat very personally. I want to show it to you, okay? I'll tell you a story. It just struck me. I'm sitting here in the chair, okay? And Lily's bouncing around trying to get attention. I think she wants more cookies. But Lily's my dog, in case anybody's wondering who Lily is. Anyway, when Jesus looked up, he saw some wealthy people putting their offerings into the treasury. And he noticed a poor widow putting in 2 small coins. He said, I tell you truly, this poor widow put in more than all the rest. For those others have all made offerings from their surplus wealth, but she, from her poverty, has offered her whole livelihood. That's a powerful line. You see, it's not the amount, it's the sacrifice and the intention that makes it salvific and redemptive. I don't know the right word for it. But I remember one of our vicars, I don't know if it was in Baltimore, I don't remember where it was a long time ago, and he said how essentially in our monasteries we live off the generosity of people who come to the front door and make contributions, as for masses, to said, and things of that sort. The little people. It's the gifts from the little people. And unlike a university where you have magnificent endowments, and university can't flourish without endowments, trust me, I know that part of the world. But monasteries and parishes don't have endowments, or at least the ones I have any familiar. But it's the common person, the average person, who often gives sacrificially in support of the church and in support. And in my case, I'm thinking of the monasteries. I remember, this goes back a long time ago, my grandmother died in 1966, so it was sometime in the mid-60s. And I don't know what we were doing, but I just remember my grandmother gave me $2. I forget what it was for, to get something to eat or something like that. But I was in the monastery at the time, okay? Or to contribute it to the monastery. And I can't remember what the purpose was she gave it to me, but she was giving it to me as her grandson, but also as a Passionist, as a member of the order. And I think it was her contribution as much to the order as to me, okay? It was a gift, $2, a couple of bucks. But she gave it to me, she gave it out of the little that she had. And I was struck by that, whatever it's worth to you. I was struck by that. Because it was the little guys, it was my grandmothers, the grandmothers of this world, the grandfathers, who were $1 here and $2 there, put food on our table, and made it possible for us to live very well, very comfortably in that regard, in that sense. I thought about that a lot, because there were times when I thought maybe we ate too well, maybe we had it too good in the monastery, and I think we got it this well, it's going this well because of the grandmothers in this world who give you $1 here and $2 there, out of the generosity of their hearts. See? It isn't the amount, it's the generosity of the heart that makes it so powerfully salvific. You see, I'm not thinking what its cash value is. I'm thinking of its redemptive value. That this is an act of love on the part of a grandmother for her grandson, but also for the institution to which he gave his life. You see, I think of things like that. I think of them a lot. Because the church lives and flourishes worldwide often by the generosity and through the generosity of the people that are the most poor, who'll give $1 here and 50 cents there, who'll contribute to the poor box, $1 here and $1 there. It's that $1 here and $1 there that puts food on the table of the monks, but also the money that is sent to the third world and provides education, clothing, food, medicine for the poorest people on earth. That's the truth. It isn't that somebody gives us a $2 million endowment at the university like it does there, which we need, okay? The church doesn't seem to need endowments, just the generosity of the poor for the sake of the poor. And she changes the world because of that. I just think of my grandmother handing me $2. $2, which at that point in my life amounted to nothing, except it was everything. And it was not soon before she died. Not too much before she died. And I think of that a lot. Maybe because I'm old now and I reflect back and I begin to see the narrative of life, mine own, but also the broadly construed narratives of life. And you see how little people, moments here, moments there, are so decisive in the story that it gets written in our own personal lives. That seems to me I told you this before. I know I have. So if I repeat there's a guy in the barrage who said, Ted, you already told that story 11 times. I know it was more like 14. Whatever. It's Bob Haberberger. He's my conscience. He's a sweetheart. I love picking on him. If you ever watch the masses in the morning, he serves. I go after him every time. That's just for fun. But what I'm saying is that I tell these stories, but they're poignantly true. But this is a simple one, that every time, especially in the morning when I leave here to go to Mass at St. Mark's, when I go down the steps, I have these photographs that are all over the wall. And they range from fairly recent, let's say the last 10 or so years, to maybe at least 50 years. And I say hello to them. Don Brennan, who was my former dean, he's dead at least 10 years. Junie, of course, 13 years. I always say hello to Junie and Don, but Junie all the time. She's my closest friend on earth, okay? And then my friends Terry and Barry Sullivan, they died so young. They're in a boat, they're out fishing. Where? Up in Canada, see? Back in 1981, or 80 or 81, 40-something years ago. And then I was on a boat with my friends, my father's friends, Pete and Demi, Pete Ferriol and Demi Sorcinelli, and that was 50 years ago, because I remember where we were, way off the tip of Long Island, in Pete's boat, you see? And I say hello to them every morning. They're very alive to me. And you can't tell my story without telling theirs. You certainly can't tell mine without talking about Junie. But also, Don Brennan, who was my boss and dean, helped to recruit and hired me. Helped. He wasn't the whole story. Jim Buncher, the dean, was, but he was the dean of Don was the dean of the grad school. And we all knew you had to build the university from the grad school, especially philosophy department. Don was extremely important, okay? Decisively. Uncle Don, I always say hello to him. He was sitting in my boat when I took that picture of him. He died very shortly after that. Very shortly. I remember with affection, because I remember that these men and women have defined my story, my narrative. And it's the same with my grandmother, the $2. She helped raise us. But I remember massive amounts, but that $2, it's the widow's mite right here. It was the widow's mite. She gave all that she had that day, $2. I think of the sacrifices that my friends have made, the stories they have told, the parts they have played in my life, and the lives of those I have loved and been loved by. It isn't the grand story, it's the little story by the little people who made all the difference in the world. The $2, the gifts of grandmothers out of their poverty, the widow's mite.